you. And then the last item on 99724.8 for $174,000. I see it's right at the cusp of the threshold of $175,000, and that always alarms me when I see values that are very close to the threshold. Not that anything bad or wrong is happening, but it's just makes me question why that amount, one, and two, what's the basis for this service, and what is the purpose of this service provider, and if they will provide their work for a limited amount of time. If it's a year, will there be transfer of knowledge to our staff that will take over, or is it going to be likely to grow more than this amount?
Right, so these services are for a consultant that we are bringing on board to help lead us in our business process review that we're undertaking in several areas. We currently don't have the staffing in order to shepherd this effort. And so what this individual will be doing is working directly with all of the district staff, as well as working with the vendors that we hire to walk us through the business process analysis to ensure that the process is continuing, is on target, and meeting the expectations of what we expect. It takes, when you're going through a business process review, you're looking at both your PeopleSoft system as well as all of the processes and paperwork and procedures of what it takes to get something done within the system. And so you need somebody with a technology background, but also with a strong management background and understanding of community colleges and how they work to walk that line between working with the vendor and working with staff. The contract was based upon 1,160 hours. There's a very detailed schedule of how many hours per day for the fiscal year at a rate of $150 per hour, and that was where the $174,000 came into play. We don't expect that it will continue. Like I said, this is a very specific process, business process review that we're undertaking in several different areas to try to improve the student experience, as well as to try to improve the processes that we go through on a daily basis, you know, in order to get things purchased and into the classrooms in order to help the students. So we're starting out with 3 different areas. We'll be growing it into larger and different areas as the process goes on. But currently it's set for a year implementation.
And were they competitively selected, or it was based on someone's judgment?
We did do an RFP process. There were interviews, and it was a recommendation made by 3 different individuals to select this person.
Thank you. That's all I have on that item.
So does this include a review of our telephone system?
Well, tangentially, I would say that it does.
What is a tangential telephone?
Well, we're looking at really the entire student experience. We're starting off with financial aid. We're also going to be starting off with academic services, and yeah, so those are the 2 main areas. We'll then move into admissions and records and just kind of the entire thing. But we didn't feel that we could do everything all at once, and so we're starting with the programs that we felt we could probably get the most bang for our buck right off the bat, for lack of a better term. So we will be working on that, you know, trying to simplify what the students have to go through in order to apply, get financial aid, you know, everything that they go through from when they first step foot on this campus to when they first sit down in the classroom to have instruction.
Or even telephone to find out.
Yes.
Yes, Irma.
So will we receive a report as you go through this process, just so that we are abreast of, the findings and also what the resolves will be?
I'm sure that's something certainly that we can do as the process goes on. We do expect that this is going to be a lengthy process. We have a lot of work to do up front before we actually get the vendor on board to start looking at the process. There's going to be a lot of meetings with classified staff, with everybody really involved. We want to get all the departments that are involved to be on board and have an understanding of what the undertaking is. It's almost like going through another computer implementation without changing the system that you have. That's not to say that we won't be making programming changes. We very well could be. It doesn't mean that we automatically will, but there is a likelihood that we could be doing some programming changes, and so we may have a need as we're going through the process to hire some technical support to get that programming changes done. It's just there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and we can definitely update as we're going on of what progress we've made.
Trustee Archuleta, if I can add to that, this is part of the board goal to improve the student experience. So this is one part of that. So it will be brought forward as an entire package instead of the detail of what the discrete system changes are going to be. But part of the redoing the front door to the college, which is sort of the student experience, the website, how we function in our business processes will be shaped by this process. And so I think what would make sense for the board, in my opinion, is as we bring back updates on how we're doing that overall process, we can point out where those business processes are being adjusted to support the overall board goal.
That's perfectly fine. I think the question is that when the institution invests a large sum of money, I think it's good for the public to know and for us to know how then the money is utilized to improve systems within the institution.
Yes, no, absolutely. And since this is part of the overall investment, because we are also hiring a design thinking consultant as well as looking at software implementation. So it is an overall large investment. We want to make sure that you're getting the entire picture of the overall investment.
Thank you.
May I ask a question?
Sure, absolutely.
President Oakley, where are the funds coming from for this expenditure?
I will let Vice President Gable answer that.
Some of it is one-time allocations that we made. We had in 14-15, we had some savings from the election costs, and so the Budget Advisory Committee recommended that we move some of those funds for a business process review. We've also allocated money with our one-time funding of mandated costs in the 15-16 year, and there's some student equity funds that have been allocated towards this effort as well. So it's kind of a...
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions?
Yes, I have a question. So what is the total investment that we're making in this realm that you were speaking to, President Oakley?
Well, I don't have that number off the top of my head, but if you consider all of the student equity funds that we're putting into practice, all the innovation award that we're leveraging, it's a substantial investment. The Innovation Award alone is about a $1.5 million investment in improving our ability to address the goals that the board set. So this is part of that. If you think about it, we are really looking at how each part of the college interacts with our students and how that affects student experience and student success. So really the entire budget is focused on these efforts, and we're aligning the resources with particularly those student success goals that the board discussed earlier today. So it is a substantial investment. Business process design is one small piece of that investment, but it is My only point is just to always keep it in context of the larger goal that we're trying to accomplish.
Any further questions on this item? And my recollection was, I turned the page here, this is 3.13.
3.11.
It's 3.11.
3.11, we're
Sorry.
going to call the roll.
I'm moving ahead here. So any more questions on 3.11? Then I would ask the secretary to call the roll.
Archuleta?
Aye.
Virginia Baxter?
Aye.
Jeff Kellogg? Aye. Doug Otto?
Aye.
Sunny Zia?
Aye.
Okay. Moving on to 3.13, the last pulled item from the consent calendar. I'd entertain a motion
So move.
by Trustee Baxter,
Second.
seconded by Trustee Archuleta.
I believe I seconded.
We have a tie. By Trustee Zia. And discussion.
Yes, so my understanding is that this is a project completion action or acceptance of a project completion. And the MDAB renovation project, what buildings are those again? If you guys can remind me.
It's buildings AA, BB, DD, and EE at the Pacific Coast campus.
Okay, and the original awarded amount was how much?
The original award was $22,191,000.
So this $23 million, 23.72186. So that's not the final amount, or is it?
No, it is not the final amount yet. We have been unsuccessfully able to get the contractor to provide documentation for some potential change orders that are still outstanding, where we're trying to negotiate all of those final change orders. Unfortunately, since the contractor isn't on site, they've moved on. There isn't, I would say, a whole lot of desire to try to get this resolved. We are pushing to try to get it resolved as soon as possible, but based upon the advice of our attorney, we are bringing forward the notice of completion at this point in time without having resolved all of the outstanding change orders that may or may not come before the board for approval.
And how much are the outstanding change orders that we're talking about here?
We don't know at this time because they haven't provided all the supporting documentation for those.
So if we approve this, what kind of leverage do we have for them to provide that proof?
Well, we will still have close to $2 million in their retention that will not be paid until we can get it finally resolved.
Okay, so are we releasing part of the retention?
We will be releasing about $717,000 of their retention, yes,
how
as
much
required by public contract code.
Okay, how much was the total retention?
2.3 million?
Right, the retention at this point in time is just under 2.4 million.
Okay, well, I'm a little bit uncomfortable accepting a project as complete if we have outstanding change orders and the contractor is no longer on site. It's a little bit uncomfortable for me to do that, because if they're not on site and if we're having a hard time getting proof, I don't understand why it's before us for approval.
Aren't there issues with the public contract code about what we have to do?
Correct.
What are those?
According to the public contract code, you are supposed to release retention 60 days after completion. And completion can be defined, on various different ways. One of the ways is occupancy of the building, which we took occupancy, over 8 months ago. They were essentially done with the building March 6th of 2015. So, 60 days after that would have been mid-June. However, it has been our practice, and under the advice of the attorney, that typically we will not bring a notice of completion to the board until we have resolved all of the change orders. Because of the lack of response by this contractor, we did ask our attorney's advice of should we move forward with the notice of completion without having all of the change orders resolved. It was our attorney's advice to make sure that we bring the notice of completion to this board meeting in August and then continue working with the vendor to try to negotiate the remaining outstanding potential change orders.
Okay, so let me get this straight. We haven't finalized all the change orders. We're going to release retention about $717,000, and as it is, the retention is a higher value, so we have a bigger leverage, and we're not getting a response. What's to say if we deem it complete, we're going to get better response, and we've let out part of the retention, which is it's quite substantial.
Well, right now our hands are tied. We're going under the advice of our attorney to do this notice of completion, to release the $717,000 in retention. We will still have about $1.7 million in retention that we haven't released. So that potentially could be our leverage to try to get it done. Ultimately, I think it's in the best interest of the district to move forward with this action as recommended. And I think we did have a meeting with the contractor just last week. So hopefully they understand the urgency. We are trying to work with them to get it done. And until we do get everything else done, we won't release the remaining retention.
Okay, and what is the type of work that is in negotiations right now in the final change orders?
It's several. I don't have the list of all the potential change orders. Some of them are being disputed. Some of them we don't have the supporting documentation. It's just this project has been a almost 4-year long project. We did buildings DD and EE first, and then we moved to BB and AA. So, as the project goes on over a 4-year period, there's been an accumulation of hundreds of potential change orders that are out there.
Okay, and any of the change orders have any kind of resemblance of liquidated damages tied into them that we're looking at in the negotiation process? Or is it...
Well, liquidated damages would be something that we would impose on the contractor. That wouldn't be a change order. So...
My question is, are there any delays that they're claiming, or vice versa, that may be tied into potential liquidated damages?
None of the potential change orders at this point in time have a time extension related to them. Those have been resolved. We have not got into the discussion of liquidated damages at this point in time because that kind of muddies the water when you're trying to negotiate your change orders. So the objective is to get all the change orders negotiated, and then we could start discussions about liquidated damages.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any sense, by my calculations, if we pay this out, the $717,000, we still have $1.655 million left in the retained account. Mm-hmm. Is there any reason to believe that won't cover the change orders that we...
Well, the change orders that are being negotiated is for added scope on the contractor's part. So if we do negotiate any change orders, that would be coming back to the board for approval, where it would increase the amount of the contract.
Gotcha. Okay, I understand that. Any other questions? Okay, on 3.13, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Irma Archuleta?
Aye.
Virginia Baxter?
Aye.
Jeff Kellogg. Doug Otto.
Aye.
And Sunny Zia.
Nay.
Okay, we are moving on to agenda item 4.1, the annual salary increase for the superintendent president. On July 28th, the board met in closed session and determined that the superintendent president had successfully completed the priority goals and performance objectives assigned to him. The board authorized the district's chief negotiator to offer the superintendent president a 2% salary increase effective January 1, 2016. Superintendent President Oakley has accepted that offer, and so we are here tonight for the Board of Trustees to consider a 2% increase in the superintendent president's annual salary, bringing the total annual salary to $326,979 effective January 1 of 2016. I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
So moved by Trustee Archuleta. Is there a second? Second by Trustee Kellogg. Discussion.
I have one.
Okay, go ahead.
So I recognize that our superintendent is working extremely hard, and we want to continue to incentivize him. But over the last 8 years, we have increased his annual salary by over $121,000. That is a 60% pay increase. During that same 8-year time period, we laid off staff and only recently increased the pay for our faculty and classified employees by 4%. And they are the backbone of this community college district. I'm worried about the message that such an action would send to both our employees and our community, especially coupled with the fact that we eliminated a number of our career technical education classes in an attempt to save money. I'm sorry, I just can't justify it at this time, and therefore I will be voting no on this item.
So, Ms. Delgado, for the salary, for 14-15, what were the salary increases that were negotiated with our bargaining units?
For 14-15, for the full-time faculty, it was an average of 5.07. Some faculty got more, some got less, but not less than 4%. But the average was 5.07%. For the certificated hourly instructors, which is our part-time faculty, it was a total of 5.07 as well. And for AFT, for 14-15, they got a 4%.
And when was the AFT act was it retroactive?
Yes, it was. It was retroactive to July 1st, 2014, so that was in effect for 14-15, essentially.
And are there reopeners in these contracts, or some of these contracts for the future?
Yes, there are reopeners for our full-time faculty for 15-16 and also for 16-17. In fact, for 15-16, there is a one reopener, and CCA has reopened on salary. And for the certificated hourly, they have 2 reopeners through 16-17. And as I understand, they've reopened on salary and rehire rights. For AFT, there are no reopeners in 15-16 or 16-17. However, we do have, as part of the agreement, increases for 15-16 and 16-17 that are included in the overall agreement.
Okay. Other questions?
No, but I'd just like to make a comment.
Sure.
That's okay. You know, I think it's important to put into context the fact that these fiscal atrocities that we experienced were experienced across the state, that they were not just unique to this institution. And community colleges across the state of California suffered a similar crisis as the one that we experience here at Long Beach City. But as times are improving, then what happens again is that we begin to take initiatives to increase salaries, to improve conditions for faculty and for staff. And I don't think we should look at it from the perspective of if we offer our chief executive increase in salary, that should take away from offering increase in salary to faculty or classified staff. I think the commitment is that we continue to work together as a team so that we can improve everyone's well-being. And we should not make it a competitive or a pitting one group against the other. I don't think it's healthy for the institution, and more importantly, it's not healthy for our students. Thank you.
Other comments or questions? Let's call the roll call.
Raise my hand.
Oh, I thought you were waving.
I haven't been in that position in a while, so I don't know what quite to do. Let me just very briefly, and I agree with the comments, regardless of what happens with our other bargaining units, those are all separate. As someone came to that podium during the public comment about, we as a board really are the ones that have to really separate a lot of information, a lot of the muck that comes along with a lot of discussions on things. We have one employee that we as a board really do hire, and that is our CEO. There's 72 CEOs in the state of California. You can base things on seniority, you can base things on the complexity of that district, or you can even look at it to what, in this case in particular, it's part of a contract that if you do, it's an incentive-based contract, and President Oakley has fulfilled those contractual obligations we put into place. So the concern I do have, and it was mentioned, is that I do look at all these separately. When we were negotiating with all the different parties, we look at a lot of information, and we have done so. It is not surprising that Superintendent President has been pursued by other districts legitimately, and that you want to keep, because as I have seen throughout the state of California with a lot of districts that go through numerous changes or short-term changes with their CEO, that is not healthy for anybody. Some people may like that because with confusion comes opportunities, but just the way for community colleges to operate, we've been very fortunate. We have one of the longer tenured CEOs in the state of California. That I would like to say is a real compliment, but unfortunately the average tenure for a CEO, it's a fraction of a number, but it's around 3 years, I think, right in there. That's not good, and there's lots of reasons for that as well. So very comfortable with the motion that was made as we went through the evaluation, and he has earned that. We looked at all the other information as well. We presented what we thought was fair. It could have been up to 4%, but I think it's important that we also send a strong message that this board is supporting the CEO as we move forward in doing some really innovative things. This college, sometimes when you're so close working within the college, you don't realize what great things happen here at Long Beach City College. We just don't go along where you see year after year community colleges. They still act as if it's community college was in existence when I was attending here decades ago. We are known as a very innovative college, doing lots of things, not necessarily inside the traditional box, and a lot of that has to do directly with your leadership. So we take all that into consideration. Obviously, I'm supportive of our CEO and what he has done, and I hope we continue, because we also have some real challenges in the next 12, 24 months as we try to make this college more of what it really should be, and that is a 2-year community college, essentially for transfer, a college where it addresses vocational, educational needs, but to try and give that and deliver that to our students so they can achieve their educational goals in a more timely fashion. That's easy to be said. It's going to be very difficult to accomplish, and so I'm pleased that we have his leadership here as we move forward. Thank you.
Yeah. I just want to say I've talked to a lot of faculty members because I feel very close to a number of them, and sometimes they don't realize what I feel, and that's okay, and sometimes I don't realize what they feel. But I truly believe President Oakley is doing an outstanding job. I'm very supportive of him. I think that he has really taken us to the next level in the state and nationally, and I'm very supportive of his salary increase.